esteemed faculty for today and our own CA Rajni Shah from Ahmedabad, Chairman Ahmedabad Branch CA Harit Dariwal, Chairman Direct Tax Committee and Treasurer of Ahmedabad Branch CA Sunil Sanghvi, young members and my dear friends. Welcome to this fourth day of Direct Tax series. Today's session is very, very important and very interesting since we are going to know about derivatives, the taxation aspects of derivatives, the accounting aspects of derivatives. And believe me, right from beginning, I have heard only from Rajni Bhai this topic. And every time I get to know something new. So a very, very warm welcome, Rajni Bhai, virtually to Ahmedabad branch. So let's start the session with ICI motto. I request everyone to place your right hand on your heart for ICI motto.
येष सुप्तेषु जागृति येष सुप्तेषु जागृति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्मिमाणः निर्मिमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनाद्यति कश्चन एतद्द्वैता 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 एतद्द्वैता.
Welcome back. I would now request Chairman of Ahmedabad Branch, CA Harit Dariwal, to give opening remarks.
Thank you, Jivan. Thank you, Jivan. Very respected faculty for today's session, CA Rajni Shah, Secretary of our branch, CA Anjali Chowdhury, Treasurer and Directors Committee Chairman Sunil Bhai, and all the participants who have joined us. A very good evening to all of you, and welcome to day 4 of this Direct Tax series. We have got phenomenal response, and all the faculty have really helped all the participants in solving all the queries related to the topics on direct taxes. Today's session is very special. I think when when we were thinking about whom to call, there was no other option but to call Rajni Bhai because he is an authority in this topic, and we are very happy that sir agreed to come for this topic. And he is not only covering the taxation, but also the accounting part, which is perhaps equally complex. So thank you so much, sir, for spending valuable time on a Saturday evening. On forthcoming events, quickly I'll go through it. On 20th, we are having the last session of this series on the important judgments of income tax. The session on TDS that got postponed will be held somewhere in the first week of October. The dates will be confirmed soon. On 23rd, we have a session on the accounting standards for non-corporate entities and the SQC. On 24th, we have a session on forensic accounting. So they have been recently launched standards on forensic accounting and investigation standards by ICA. And we are going to have an overview of the same on 24th of September. On 24th, we are also starting our first ever women RRC. The registrations are still on, and we are just left with very few registered seats. So all the women CAs who want to register, kindly do it at the earliest. It is taking place at Dwarka. On 27th of this month, we are going to start a special series on RERA. So the details will be out soon. We are going to cover the entire act and the Gujarat rules also in the entire 5-day series on RERA. 27 to 1st of October, the series will be taking place evening 5 to 7, and the best faculty will be dealing with the topics. Tomorrow, that is on 19th September, we have a very special session for students on the tax audits. So since the season is on, we have a schedule tomorrow on the tax audit, ICDS, and even Bhavat Borana sir is going to come and give a motivation lecture to the students. So all your articles, if they are not registered physically, the virtual is still on. So you can tell them to register virtually for tomorrow morning's session from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Apart from this, we are having our direct test RRC on 22nd to 24th of October at ITC Maratha, Mumbai. Again, we have just 2 days left for the early bird discount that we have. So kindly register for the same at the earliest, and especially the flight tickets before they get expensive. Kindly book the same. It's a very wonderful plan RRC. The details will be shared in the group. With this, I once again thank Rajni bhai for coming today and enlightening us to this topic. Sir, I'm sure everyone is going to have a great learning from your experience and the knowledge that you possess. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, for your important updates and guidance. I would request all the participants to take the advantage of these programs and as usual, give us the overwhelming response. With this, I would now request CA Sunil Sanghvi to introduce the esteemed faculty for today, CA Rajni Shah.
Thank you, Azliman. CA Rajni Shah, member of our institute, and not only our institute. Today only I come to know he is a member of all any other two professional bodies, that is CS and CWA. And sir has also cleared the information system audit course of our institute. Rajni Shah is in practice for more than 30 years in profession and in the fields mainly like accounts, ERP, SEF, audit, income tax, service tax, and project finance. He regularly writes articles for the Journal of a Chartered Accountants Association. He has been editor of the journal published by the Chartered Accountant Association Ahmedabad for the year 13-14. Sir is also an eminent speaker and delivered lectures on several topics at the various forums. He is currently the chairman of the Legal Representative Committee of the Chartered Accountant Association Ahmedabad. He is also a member of the ICI Journal and the International Affairs Committee of the Institute. With this brief introduction, we welcome you, sir, and let's have a big round of applause for us.
Thank you.
I would request Sri Rajni bhai to start the session.
Sir, just to interrupt for a minute, I think there are few members who are facing some issues in registration today. So we are just working on that in the back end and soon the registration will open again. Start the session.
Should I? Yeah. So good evening to everyone, and thanks Sunil for the kind words, because many things I came to know today only from your speech, that who am I. Anyway, thanks to the organizers for providing me this opportunity to speak on the subject, which is fortunately or unfortunately, you have selected a subject. Fortunately, because I don't have to prepare much, what to speak about. Unfortunately, because, I want to say and inform to all that I also can speak on other subject than this. But anyway, this is a webinar and it's a first time I am speaking at a webinar. I would also like to request the members that who are here to hear me and know about the subject to keep their videos open, so that at least, CP apart, at least, they'll be able to know what I want to convey to you. At the same time, if, organizers permit, we can also have a sort of interaction, or in chat box, you can interrupt me and raise the query. I would try to, touch upon the issues which will be raised by you. Coming straight to the subject proper. It is a right time to me to select this topic because the market is in the north direction, and everyone, including the chartered accountants and our clients, are more or less very busy in this equity market and trying to gain the benefit to the extent possible. I was also taking the lecture on the similar subject a decade, before, or 15 years before. There were, believe me, many issues out of which many issues are now diluted. The issues about the bad debts to the broker, the issues about the bad delivery of the shares, then the client code modifications and penny stocks issues. So the SEBI and the exchanges and the government policies have changed drastically, but still, whenever I'm talking to the chartered accountant friends or the accountants of the traders in the equity market or the investors, they are still not clear about what will be the taxability of the transactions they are carrying on, or what will be the accounting treatments to be given. So today lecture, I have tried to bifurcate into various segments. Like, first of all, I will touch upon the equity portion. Then what is the equity and also the commodity market, because many of our clients are also dealing in the commodity market. Then comes the exchange part, that is the cash segment of the exchange and the derivative segments. Then comes the derivative per se, taxability and the accounting part, and some other issues which I would like to touch upon. To start with, in equity market, we all know there are two major segments. One is the cash segment, which is by and large the delivery segment, we call them. Another is the derivative segments, which comprises of the future and options, which I will deal with later. In cash segment, we all know that now the process and the procedures have changed drastically. So when you enter into the market and you place the order to buy some shares, the SEBI and the exchanges are now very clear that you have to deposit the margin before you place the order. Similarly, when you are going to sell the shares, you have to make sure that you have the enough stock with your demat account, and also you have to complete the procedure to go for the margin. In delivery segment, there are two situations which is possible. One is when the market opens, you buy the shares, and before the market closes, you sell the shares. So it is very simple. It is intraday transactions. When you buy the shares and before the market closes, if you do not square up the transactions, you will be compulsorily required to take the delivery. So these are the basic things I would like to touch upon before we'll go in detail about the other things. So far as the delivery transactions are concerned, the fundamental question comes to us is whether these particular transactions are pertaining to the business activity or it's an investment activity, or the income or loss of which is a business income or loss, or it is going to be a short-term or long-term capital gain or loss. In the whole Income Tax Act, you will never find any such clarifications or the definition that which transactions are business transactions or which transactions are the transactions in the nature of investment activities. Few years back, this issue was raised with Advanced Ruling Authority, and in one of the FI, that is Fidelity, the matter was discussed at the Advanced Ruling Authority at depth, and then they come out with certain parameters. They came out with the parameters like what? Whether a particular transaction or the set of transactions are carried out with your own capital, or you are borrowing the funds. Second would be, what would be the frequency of the transactions? If you are very frequent in dealing in the shares and securities, then it all depends upon, what is the frequency, and then accordingly it will be investment activity or business activity. Then comes the volume of the transactions. Then average period of holding. So there are certain parameters which are fixed by this advanced ruling, and according to which, at the end of the answers to all the parameters, one would come to the conclusion that the person or the SSE is carrying on the business, or the SSE is purely an investor, the income of which is capital gain loss, long-term or short-term, as the case may be. May I ask the organizer, because on my screen I am getting some message to admit someone, or so it is, I have to do that or somebody else will?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, frequently I'm getting some message on my screen that somebody is waiting to admit.
That we are resolving.
Okay.
There is some technical
There is
issue
some
here.
technical issue.
Okay. Thanks. So the issue was that we were on the activity and the nature of activities. In many judgments are also available whereby the tribunals and the courts have decided the matter, depending upon this particular advanced ruling. Even one interesting decision given by Ahmedabad Tribunal in one Sugam Chand's case was that if the person is holding the shares for less than 1 month, you should treat it as a short term, otherwise it is a long term or the business activity. So there are various judgments available. But as a chartered accountant, when the client comes to us, it is our duty to make sure that, when you finalize their accounts or you prepare the income tax return, you have to take a call depending upon or after analysis of these transactions, whether this particular SSE in the particular year has carried out the business or is simply an investor. The problem was when the tax rate of the short-term capital gain was at a concession rate of 15% or, as the case may be, and the long-term capital gain was exempt. Many SSEs or many investors or traders, I would say, when they come to us, they have series of transactions, 5-10 pages of the transactions, and then they will come to us and say that, this is my capital gain, and I want to take benefit of the concession rate of tax. On the face of it, we could see that he is absolutely trader in the equity market. Now the question is, when we saw it as a business income, then the tax would be higher. Many times it happens that when the client comes to you, you have to make sure that you have to compute at both the angle. I mean, keeping in mind both the angles. If it's a business income, then you can claim the expenditure like administrative expenses or depreciation of the car or many such expenditure. If it is an investor, then no such special expenses are allowed to be reduced from the income. The problem still remains, the matter still comes to us, and it is our duty to make sure that, in which category our client falls. Assuming that we know what will be the income of the client, whether it's a business income or long-term or short-term capital gain, as the case may be. Then the question comes up is, the simple section is, when the transaction is on delivery basis, and assuming he has number of transactions, frequency is very high, day in, day out, he's dealing in the transactions of the equity market, there is a business income. The second question comes is, when there is intraday transactions, you have to have a separate transactions to be recorded in the books of accounts, which will be speculative in nature because there is no delivery. We all know that when the transactions are ended up with the delivery, it is a business income. When the transactions are squared up without delivery, it's a speculative transaction. Now, I would like to draw the attention of the viewers about the exceptions to this rule. It happens that blanketly we know that these are the transactions intraday, so it has to be speculative transactions. And in the preparation of the return of income, we will show it as a speculative income, profit or loss as the case may be. So far as there is profit, no problem. But when there is a loss, we all know that the loss is to be carried forward and can be set up only against the speculative income of the next year or years. But there are certain situations which we are also taking benefit for some of the clients. So for example, Section 43.5, if you look at Section 43.5, there are subsection 43.5 A, B, C, D, and E. For today's subject, I will not touch 43.5 A, but there is one interesting subsection 43.5 B, which says that if you are entering into a transactions by hedging process and you have stock of shares or investment of shares in your demat account, and you are selling the shares, and then you are squaring it off without going for the delivery mode, then though there is no delivery, it is still to be considered as a normal business. I would just give an example. I have the shares of Reliance in my account. I have 500 shares in my demat account. In the morning when the market opens, I think that the price of Reliance will go down, so let me sell my shares. I'm selling the shares at the rate of, say, for example, 2400, which is a prevailing rate in the market. At 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I observed that the market is going up, and my call was wrong. The decision which I took was wrong. So I am now calling my broker and saying that the shares which I sold today in the morning, you buy it for me and square off the transactions. Now, as we understand that, in the morning, I sell the shares, and in the afternoon I'm buying the shares. So obviously at the day end, there is no delivery. But if you look at the wordings of section 43.5 subclause B, it says that when you are hedging the transactions or when you are taking a position against the investment or the stock which you have with you, and then you are entering into a transaction, reversing that at the end of the day, though there is no delivery, but this will be considered as a normal business and not a speculative business. So this is one exception. Second exception, which is not much relevant now, but I would just try to pin upon. In the previous time, what was happening, that the brokers were taking risk on behalf of the clients. And the clients were also, enjoying the benefit of the different clearing dates. At present, we all know, today, if you enter into transaction as I told you, I have to make the payment in advance or at the most on the second day. So it is called T+1 session. Previously, the BSE and NSE stock exchanges have weekly clearing, Tuesday and Friday, respectively. So the clients were taking position for a week's time. So the risk to the broker was very high. So if you look at 43.5 subsection C, it says that when the broker, say for example, I'm a broker and my partner Manthan is a client, and Manthan is a very aggressive client. So he goes into entering into the position in the market. And as a broker, I am worried that he is taking position, but he's wrong. He's buying the shares, but to me, it's not his right call. So what the broker used to do, when some of the clients is buying the shares in the same quantity on the same day, he was selling the shares in his own account. But at the end of the day, when it is proved that the client was right and the broker was wrong, so broker has to square up the transactions, and then the transaction is squared up even without delivery. Even though there is no delivery, this is also one of the exceptions where the transaction will be considered as a normal business transactions. Then comes subsection 43.5D, which we will deal when we will touch upon the derivative segment. One interesting situation is, so far I discussed that when there is a transaction with delivery, it is a normal business transactions. Without delivery, it is intraday transactions, which is speculative in nature. There are certain exceptions in 43.5 subsection B and C, fine. Inversely, or to reverse to it, there is one provision in the Income Tax Act which says that even though there is delivery of the transaction, it is not a normal business transaction. Now, this is webinar. Otherwise, if this would have been a physical, meeting, I would have raised this question to the audience. So, interactive session, would have been much better, because this is a subject that, it requires a classroom teaching sort of, because still I have not come to the accounting part, because so far as the accounting part is concerned, I think I'm not sure whether I'll be able to convince you or confuse you more, time will tell. So there is one exception to the rule, again, exception to the exception, that when there is a delivery of the transaction, it has to be a normal business transactions. But if you look at explanation to section 73, it says that when the companies they're doing some business, not exclusively the business of shares and securities, and if that company is entering into the transactions on delivery basis, doing some other business, I'm not going much into the wordings of the explanation, but broadly there is exception to exception, and it says that even if you are carrying on the transactions on the delivery basis, it has to be a speculative transaction. So there are two absolutely different positions in this particular delivery-based transactions. Now comes the main issue, which F&O segment, everybody is talking about. In fact, F&O or future and options in common parlance, we say there is nothing like F&O. It is a future and option segment, but it is under the umbrella of the derivative segment. Now somebody asked me, what is derivative? Derivative per se is nothing. The word derivative has been derived from the word to derive. So in simple language, I can say it is an underlying value of the asset. Any damn asset has a derivative value. Value of any asset, may it be share, security, metals, gold, silver, chair, table, anything under the sky has some underlying value. And this future word it goes with the value of the particular asset or commodity at a future date of future time, or future expiry of the month or series, whatever you say. So in a way, it is carrying cost principle is there. To put it in simple words, I would say that if you look at the market, in equity market, you will find that on the first day of the series, today is 18th of September, and the expiry will be on the last Thursday of every month. So this time it is 30th September. It is exactly the last day of the month. So the October series will start from 1st of October. If you look at the price of a particular script in F&O segment or derivative segment, there will be a difference in the price. So for example, the Reliance price in the cash segment or delivery segment is 2,400. You will see that in F&O segment, it will be around 2,420 or 30 or whatever. So there has to be some difference. That difference is nothing but the carrying cost. That difference is a carrying cost. Now, in derivative, if you will go into the detail, it's a combination of future. What is futures? Again, future segment is subdivided into two. One is the index futures, others is the stock futures. Nowadays, you will find some Bank Nifty or Nifty 50 or BSE 500, or even in BSE, there is a segment of derivative. But broadly, people trade in index futures and stock futures. Now in stock futures, there are around 260 to 270 scripts which are selected, which are allowed to be traded in the F&O segment. How these scripts are selected? The exchange and the SEBI together decides a particular script to be included in future segment, depending upon the liquidity, it's mainly market capitalization, and the volume of the transactions. Many times you will find that this particular script is now taken out of the future segment, or some scripts are added back to the future segment. Even nowadays, this surveillance department of the exchange and SEBI is so powerful that every day morning you will find that this particular 5-7 scripts are now today in ban. So today, nobody will be able to trade in this particular scripts in F&O segment. So even on daily basis, they are now monitoring that which will be the scripts included in the F&O segment, or one can trade in that F&O segment. Stock future and index futures are main two components. When you enter into transactions, the difference between cash segment or delivery segment and the future segment is all the scripts which are listed on the exchanges, you can trade in cash segment. Even, one can buy 1, 2, 5, 10 shares as you like it. In derivative or future segment, the scripts which are listed on the segment, there is a lot size. So the exchange decide the lot size depending upon the total value of a particular lot. I know that I'm going a bit out of the subject given to me about taxability and accounting, but unless we know these type of things, we will not be able to convince our clients that we know about your market, and accordingly we have to advise. When you enter into a transaction in the future market, there's a lot, as I told you. The lot size goes on changing. I'll give the example. The lot size of Reliance is 250 shares today, and the price is 2,400. So the total value of one lot will come to around 6 lakhs. As compared to this, if you look at, say, Cadila Health, the lot size is 2,200 and the price is 560 something. So the lot size value of the one lot size is around 11 to 12 lakhs. So at regular intervals, the surveillance department of the exchanges goes on monitoring these things, and then they come out with the change in the lot size. I'm sorry, I was not able to see my screen. Okay, I'm
okay.
I'm back again. I'm back again. So why I'm saying this? Because we all know that future transactions are very risky transactions. And why it is so risky? Because the size of a particular lot, so if you enter into a transaction, there is a minimum amount of value of a lot that you are entering into. Second thing is people do over trading. If I want to buy shares of Reliance at 250, I will continue the example of Reliance during whole of my lecture, because then only you will get some clarity. If I want to buy shares of Reliance at the rate of 2,400, then the amount of the investment which I have to make will be around 5-6 lakhs, right? If I want to buy the similar amount of shares in future segment, I don't have to pay 6 lakhs of rupees, because there is only margin money which is to be paid. And nowadays, the margin money is not required to be paid in cash compulsorily. I can give my shares which are there in my demat account. Of course, there are some list of eligible securities which can be used as a margin for the F&O transactions. So I don't have to pay anything, and still I can enter into the transactions. And this is a reason that the people go on doing the over trading. And that is why we come to know that many of our clients, or many for known, have incurred huge losses in future segment. The main reason of all this problem is the over trading. That is why, on a lighter note, I can say that somebody told that future option or F&O segment is a slow poison. Then one strong addictive Satoria says that who's in a hurry to die. But anyway, so this is how the future segment works. Then comes the option segment. Now the things will be a bit difficult for the audience and for me to go ahead from here. Future and options are two different segments. Future, I try to explain to you. So far as option is concerned, again, there are two things in the options. One is call options, other is put options. Call options means in simple terminology, I can say it is related to the buy part, and put is a sell part. If you understand the option, there are certain terminology which are used. One is a buyer of, or the holder of call or put. Second is the writer of the option. And third important is the strike price. I know this is going to be a bit difficult to understand for you and also for me to make you understand, but I'm still trying. I will try to explain to you with an example. This option is nothing but, in a simple term, I can say it is an insurance premium. I will compare these options with the insurance premium. Everybody owns car. So we used to take the insurance of our asset, that is car. And the insurance company is collecting the premium. Now, insurance company is well aware that every day every car is not going to meet with the accident. So they will go on collecting the premium. And as and when there is some claim of an insured person, then only they have to complete their obligation to release the claim and make the payment. Similarly, when the car owner thinks that I have to just make the insurance premium and make sure that in some eventuality, if my car is getting, meeting with an accident, there is someone who will reimburse my expenditure. Similarly, here in option theory, you will find that the buyer of the call or put is a person who is paying the premium, like a car owner. The person who is the writer of the call or put, that is option, is an insurance company, for example. So this is nothing but the redistribution of the risk from a person who is not that courageous to more able investors or more able traders. So this is a theoretical part I explained to you. Now, how it works, I will give an example. Today, again, I am telling you that the shares of Reliance I want to buy and the price is 2,400. Now, nobody knows tomorrow. I'm expecting that the market will go up because it is going up since last 1.5 years. So the price of Reliance is 2,400 and I'm expecting that it will touch 2,500 in next 10 days. But still, I'm not that sure. So I don't want to carry much risk because there is always a downward possibility. If some adverse news comes for Reliance and the market opens 200 rupees less than the current price, then I have to incur big loss, huge loss. So there is some mechanism which is nothing but the option strategy. What I'll do? Call and put. If I buy the call, I will have a right to buy. If I buy put, I will have a right to sell. Again, I'm repeating, this is not that easy to make someone understand. But anyway, I'm repeating. If I'm buying a call, it means I'm paying premium. I have a right, but I don't have obligation. If I'm buying either call or put, I'm a holder or buyer of the option. If somebody is selling it, he has an obligation also. It's like an insurance company. So if I'm buying Reliance shares today at the rate of 2,400, but I don't want to incur some unusual loss, what I will do, I will try to make sure that my loss is restricted to a particular level. For that, I will have to buy the put option. How it works? The put option, so for example, 2,500 is the rate of Reliance, and I am sure that I don't want to make loss of per share for more than 50 rupees. So 2,350 would be ideal price for me to book the loss and go away. Then there is a system. If you look at the option prices, the regular trades are there. I will find out that what is the premium I have to pay if I want to square up my transactions at a particular level. So if I will go to that, I will find that at the 2,360 strike price, the premium I have to pay for the put option would be, say, for example, 10 rupees. I will pay premium of 10 rupees and I will go home. Tomorrow, suppose market opens at, say, 2,700 rupees. Then my 10 rupees premium is now exhausted. It is my cost, forget it. But suppose if the market opens at 2,200 rupees, if I have not purchased the put option, if I have not bought the put option and paid premium of rupees 10, I would have incurred the loss of 200 rupees from 2,400 to 2,200. But as I have bought the put option, which has given me the right to sell, right? Then my transaction would be squared up theoretically and practically also at the rate of 2,360. So my loss would be restricted to 40 rupees. And the person who has purchased the put option, he will bear the loss from 2,360 to 2,200. So it's like an insurance premium which I'm paying against my position. So this is how the option works. But interestingly, many of the investors are now smart and they are using this option strategy for their own purpose. How it works, again, I'm telling you. Many of our clients have huge portfolio in the Demat account. What they are earning? They are earning nothing except the dividend, and they are increasing the value of the shares, or simultaneously it can be decreased also. So every day they will see the app in the money control and will see that how their portfolio goes up or goes down. So they are earning nothing out of it except the dividend. Many smart investors are using this option strategy to earn something out of the dead stock they have in their Demat account. What they will do, again, I'm giving one small example, then we'll go to the taxability part of the F&O. What they will do, I have 500 shares of Reliance in my Demat account. Today the price of Reliance is 2,400 rupees. What I'll do, I will buy the call of a long distance, meaning thereby, so for example, 2,520 or 2,560 rupees call is, say, 10 rupees. I am buying Reliance right now, or I have stock in my Demat account. I'm earning nothing out of it. Then I will sell the call option of Reliance of 2,560 rupees, meaning thereby I'm earning something. I will earn, say, for example, 10 rupees out of it. Now, if the price of Reliance goes above 2,560, then I am selling the call, means somebody has bought my call. I have an obligation, he has a right. So from 2,560 onwards, he will have a right from me, and the price above 2,560 will be his profit, not mine. But practically in one particular month, 8 days are holidays, 2-3 other holidays are there. So hardly the market functions for 18 to 20 days. So if you look at the historical data, 95% cases, what happens that if you sell the call of the long distance, you will continue earning on that. And even if in case the price of Reliance goes above 2,560, fine. You will earn the profit from 2,400 to 2,560. Let the other person earn the profit, because in market, everything cannot come to our home, because we are not the only person to earn the profit. So that is one part. Second part, what art of selling is also there, which I will just like to touch upon. I have also given lectures on this. Art of selling in the equity market is very important. 10 out of 10 approximately are proven wrong on this. Why I'm saying so? Because it happens with everyone that if I'm buying the shares, the price goes down. And if I'm selling the shares, the price goes up. So there is some strategy of selling of the shares. If you are buying the shares, and your market is a bull market, you have to continuously keep in your mind the stop loss. If the prices goes up, you also goes on increasing your stop loss in your mind. That is where you will get the maximum profit. In Gujarati, it is said that loss karo and afsos karo saro, because many times it happens that you sell the shares and the price goes up. Then you will say, I sold the shares and the prices went up. So if I would have kept the shares with me, I would earn more. So ifs and buts theory goes on with that. So this is how this F&O segment works. Now I'm just putting a hold over here. And if anybody has any question, which I try to explain to you about some strategy or how it works, or what is what, then after we'll go to the taxation part of the F&O. Hedge transactions are I'm just reading some query over here. Hedge transactions are normal business and not speculative business, is by express provision in the act or brought out by judicial processes. As I told you, section 43(5)(b) says that if you are hedging against your stock or investment, and then you are not taking or giving delivery, then also it will be considered as a normal business transactions. Because this hedging and arbitrage are on this are almost on the same front. Arbitrage is what somebody is buying at one exchange and selling at another exchange. So also you can take Am I available to the audience?
Yes, sir. Now you are visible.
Yeah, some problem is there in my office about the net, I guess so. Anyway, so somebody raised a query about the hedging transactions. You could take the benefit of subsection 43(5) subsection B, that against your own position, if you are hedging the transaction and you are incurring the loss without delivery, then even though it will be considered as a normal business transaction or normal business loss. Now coming to the taxability part of F&O. Now, as I told you, F&O transactions, there are no deliveries except in commodities, because if you compare the equity market with the commodity market, even there in commodity market, there's a derivative segment. And nowadays the option part is also started, because previously option was only in the equity market and not in the commodity market. But now on selective commodities, options have started. 43(5) A, B, C we discuss. A is not important right now. B and C we discuss. 43(5)(d) says that even in equity market, if there is a future transaction and the security transaction tax is paid, it's an eligible transaction, and the loss, though there is no delivery, will be considered as a normal loss, or the transaction is a normal transaction. Similarly, when the commodities derivatives were introduced. Subsection 43(5)(e) was introduced, and accordingly, even the loss on derivative segment of the commodities would also be considered as a normal loss or the normal business transactions. So taxability part of future options is very simple. It is normal business transactions, and you can set off the loss from the future option segment with any other business income you have. Somebody asked me the query about the turnover part. I will take up intraday would fall in. I'm correct to say that only intraday would fall in speculation? Yes, obviously, because if it is not intraday, then you have to take the delivery. You don't have any option. Many times it happens that if you're selling the shares and you don't have stock or balance in your demat account, then it will be auction, and the auction is always very costly. So it is correct to say that only intraday would fall in speculation, subject to certain exceptions as I discussed in subsection 43(5)(b), C to some extent, and then the reverse is a transaction. Then even if it is delivery based, expression 73 says for some of the companies, though there is delivery, it will be considered as a speculative transactions. How we can exercise option before expiry? Yes, see, every time, every day, like shares and scripts, the saudas are going on. If you look at, if you have money control app, if you go to a particular script, then go to future, then go to option, and then select the expiry, because every time 3 months series is on. So September, October, and November, you select September, expiry is 30th September, and then you will find the buy and sell rate. So if I'm buying call today, I can definitely sell my call, which is bought today, tomorrow, day after, as my choices. So yes, we can exercise option, but the option can be exercised by the holder, not by the writer, not by the seller. So holder or buyer of the option has a right, but no obligation. But the writer or the seller of the option has obligation. So whenever the buyer exercises option, then the seller has to oblige. But yes, before expiry, one can exercise the option or reverse the option. Can we sell at time if I am holder of put? Yes, you are holder of put means you are buyer of put, you have right to sell. You have right to sell. You have bought. Yes, you can sell the put option which you are buying right now, day after, 2 days, 5 days before, but before the expiry. What happens if you forget to square up the transactions in future or as well as in option? As I told you, the last Thursday of the every month is the expiry date. If you do not place the order for the reversal of the soda, it will be automatically squared up. Please explain put option again. Okay. Call and put option. Put is related to sell and call is related to buy. If I'm buying the call, I have right to buy. If I'm buying the put option, I have right to sell. Reversely, if I'm selling the call, somebody has a right to buy. If I'm selling the put, somebody has a right to sell. So I think I am clear. F&O intraday is speculative? No. F&O intraday or otherwise is never speculative, because there is a shelter given in section 43(5)(d), subsection D and E also. E for commodity derivatives and D for equity derivatives. Even if FO ends up without delivery, yet it is normal business. Yes, I explained. If you sell IPO allotted share on listing day itself, can it be said business? It all depends. If in IPO, by and large, it is an investment activity. But if you are doing so many transactions at the exchange, along with IPO transactions, then it will be considered as a business. Secondly, there are big brokerage houses who are giving you huge finance. So for example, you have 5 lakhs of rupees. The brokerage house in HNI category, they will give you 4 crores and 95 lakhs of rupees. For 7 days, they will charge interest from 7 to 10% depending upon the IPO. Zomato IPO was carrying the maximum interest of 11%. So if you are going through this HNI category by taking finance from the brokerage house or NBFC, then definitely it will be considered as a business. Even if there's a solitary transaction, it is nothing but the venture. It's a business venture. Nobody can say that you are investing 5 lakhs, your NBFC is investing 4 crores 95 lakhs for you, and there is an application of 5 crores. You are allotted shares, you are paying interest, you are paying charges, and then you are selling on day 1 or day 2 after IPO is allotment is listed, it is a business transaction. But it all depends. All IPO shares allotted on the listing itself or afterwards, it makes no difference. It has to be read with the other transactions. Does section 44 AD is applicable for speculative transactions? I'll come later on that. Now, taxability part of the F&O transactions are there. Now coming to the accounting part. Accounting part of, first we'll see the accounting part of the delivery-based transactions. It is very simple. If it is intraday transactions, you take it to the intraday trading account, which will be speculative. If you are buying and selling regularly, you are a trader, it will be sales and purchase respectively, like any other commodity, steel, cement, paper, chair, furniture, whatever. You know, it's a business per se. So you have to debit purchase account, credit sales account, that's it. Practical problem comes is the clients do not have good accountants, number one. Second is we do not find good accounting software for this particular activity in the market. So the role of chartered accountant becomes very important because you have to understand first whether the accountant has done the correct accounting or not, because accordingly you will be in a position to find out, you know, what is the speculative transactions, what is the normal income. And in many income tax scrutiny, we have faced this problem that the department has come out with and saying that these are the intraday transactions because they are getting records straight from the exchanges. Even the brokers can give you the details about your transactions. It's called investment summary. So investor report summary, investor summary, whatever, they are giving all these details. Accordingly, you have to cross-match the accounts with your broker and then come out with the final conclusion that these particular transactions are business transactions, investment transactions, intraday transactions, etc. Problem is the client is not thinking about the chartered accountants or the accountant when he's digging into this activity. He's buying some shares today, selling some shares which he is holding in his demat account, then again selling the shares which he has bought in the morning, and then in the you know, before close of the market he's again buying something in, you know, delivery segment. So far as F&O segment is concerned, the contracts are separate. Contracts are separate, so there is not much a problem. But the problem comes in the delivery segment when there is a mixture of intraday transactions as well as the transactions of buy and sell on delivery basis. So the accountant and the chartered accountant has to make sure that in the combined contracts, you have to carve out the transactions of intraday nature, because those difference buying and selling in intraday transactions will be taken to the speculative part, and the rest will go to the normal business or investment as the case may be. There is also possibility that a single person or SSE can have two different set of accounts. Accounts in a sense, not two different set of accounts like, you know, number one, number two, but one set for investment activity and other for business transactions. If I'm buying some shares, which I'm sure I will hold for a longer period of time, I will put it in an investment category, and the rest I will go on buying and selling, and I will show as a trading activity. So this is very much possible that one SSE can have two segments together in the books of accounts, and accordingly they can give the accounting treatment. Even in that fidelity advanced ruling I just touched upon, in itself it is said that one person can have investment activity as well as the business activity at the same time. Coming to the accounting part of the future segment first. In future, what happens when you enter into transaction, the exchange through broker, they collect the margin from you, because as I told you, you don't have to pay the full amount of the value of the lot size. The margin is, you know, ranging from 8% to 20% accordingly. If you are giving cash means check, not hard cash, then it's very simple. If you are buying some shares or selling, in both the transactions, there is margin. So if you are short, because in F&O, there is possible that you can short sell. In delivery segment, if you do not have something in your demat account, you cannot sell. But in future segment, you can sell something which you do not have. So if I think in the morning that the share of Reliance will go down today, there's a bearish trend of this particular script, I will short sell it. And then the price goes down, then I will buy. So there is very much possible that you can short sell in the future segment. So if I'm buying or selling, I have to pay the margin. So when I pay the margin, It is very simple accounting. Initial margin account is debited, bank account is credited, that's it. Then comes, if I'm buying today and selling today in future segment, very good, nothing to be paid, no margin except the advance margin you might have paid. Whatever profit and loss is there, you debit or credit the F&O trading account and forget. If I am not reversing my transaction on the same day itself, then the problem and question starts. I am buying Reliance today, I am not selling before 3:30 when the market closes, then my position will be continued on the next day till the last Thursday of the month. You know what happens? You will see the bunch of contracts with your client. It's of no use because the broker has to generate contracts on daily basis. If I'm buying Reliance today of 2,400 rupees and the closing price is say 2,350, meaning thereby today I have hypothetical loss of 50 rupees. So the broker will issue the contract note that this is the price at which you bought, this is the closing price, and accordingly you have to pay M2M, that is mark to market margin. Second day when the market opens, like opening and closing stock we have in our trading account. On the second day when the market opens, your transaction or your SODA will start from 2350. Then again you have to see at the closing, what is the price. If it is 2,450, you will be given credit of 100 rupees. Then again M2M, again you will get a contract. So it will go on till you square up the transactions. Now, so far as accounting part is concerned, whenever you pay the margin, it is the initial margin which you are paying, it will come under the current assets in the balance sheet itself. If you are getting M2M, which is a good amount of profit, and it covers your margin and you are getting some credit balance with your broker, and though you are not reverse the transaction, then it will be considered as more and more, it will go on adding and it will be current assets. Reversely, it will be shown as current liability, but it will not come to profit and loss account till you square off the transactions. So again, taking example of Reliance, I'm buying Reliance, I'm carrying it forward for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days. On 11th day, I'm reversing the transaction. What will happen? The purchase price is 2,400. I have paid the margin in cash. It is lying balance in my current assets, and then the transaction is squared off. Whatever balance in that margin account is there is my profit or loss. That account will be closed and my F&O trading account will be credited or debited as the case may be, if it is a profit or loss as the case may be. 1 second. There is some query. Is income from F&O always business income, though there is only 5 to 10? Yes. Even if it is one transaction. Now, this is a very important question. Many times it happens that a client has done 2, 3, 4, 5 transactions in future options. Then one view is that this type of transactions, net result, profit or loss can be shown as income from other sources. In my view, this is not possible because per se it is a business transaction. One interesting question comes up is that now the institute has allowed the chartered accountants to carry on the F&O transactions. And if a chartered accountant in practice is doing this F&O transaction, he can do it now. And then the question comes whether it is a business income or income from other sources. If it is business income, then we practicing chartered accountants are making applications at the various, to be on various panels and everywhere. Even the institute is asking for the returns and balance sheet and P&L account. And there, many times it happens that our income from our routine practice is less than the profit from the F&O transaction. So it is possible. But one interesting observation is that the institute has allowed the chartered accountants to carry on the F&O transactions, but it has not allowed the HUF of a practicing chartered accountants to carry on the F&O transaction. This is something which I have not digested. I raised this query before the CCM of Ahmedabad, and I was not sure what he tried to explain to you, but still the position is a practicing chartered accountant can carry on the business of in F&O segment, but the HUF of practicing chartered accountant cannot carry out the transactions at the F&O segment in the stock exchange or commodity exchange. Anyway, now coming further, life is not simple. As I explained to you, You enter into a buyer transactions, pay some margin, show it in current asset, square it off, whatever profit and loss is there, you take it to F&O trading account and forget. Life is not simple because the client is not doing the transactions as per our understanding. Today is buying something. In the afternoon is short selling something. Then in the second day, what he's doing, that's something which is short sold is reverse, is buying something more, and then it goes on. So you have to find out when a particular transaction is reversed. Now, if you look at the contracts, with sometimes it runs into pages. How would you find out that which transactions are squared up and I have to take the amount of profit or loss from the current asset to trading account or F&O trading account? This is where the need of good accountant and good chartered accountant is there. So in lighter sense, I can say there are three types of accounting for F&O transactions. One, what I understand, one, what you understand, and the third one is the correct accounting. So the transactions, if are not much, what the practical approach one is taking is they're asking for the client's accounts from the broker's books of accounts, and the accountant is passing all the entries from the broker book exactly on the reverse what the broker has shown. So broker is giving the account of F&O segment, which includes the margin amount. So it is a wrong accounting, but not incorrect accounting. Now, I will try to just prove what is wrong and what is incorrect. So far as the guidance note is concerned, so far as accounting standard was also issued, which is very complex, so I will not touch upon that. But the amount of profit loss account in the year end would be correct. So that is why it is not incorrect. But the problem is that part is including of the margin, and the turnover of the client would be manifold, because every time the client's account is debited or credited by broker, it is inclusive of the margin. So what I try to explain to you is that the profit or loss comes into trading account only when the transaction is squared up. But so far as broker is concerned, he goes on issuing contract notes, including margin amount. So if you take due to you or due to you or us, that amount straightway to the account, that will be an account which will include the margin amount, and accordingly the turnover will be artificially increased, which may be beneficial for the chartered accountants to cross the limit for the turnover under section 44EB. But as I told you, I do not have any ready-made solution to the problem, except the chartered accountant has to explain or sit with the accountant and the client, and there is a possibility that you can find out the transactions which are squared up from the systems of the broker. They give you the report, and accordingly you can find out that which are the transactions squared up, and accordingly you take the profit or loss out of it and show it to the trading account. Just because ICAI is allowed F&O and considering as an investment activity, it will not fall under the other sources. No, ICAI is allowed F&O considering it as ICAI is not allowed F&O considering it an investment. ICAI is simply allowed that the chartered accountant in practice can carry out F&O transactions. It has not specifically said that this will be considered investment, because investment in FO segment is not possible because there is no delivery. So when there is no delivery, there is no investment. Simple. So ICAI has allowed the chartered accountants to do the business. Now to show it as income from other sources or business activity is up to you. But it is never investment activity, because F&O segment will not, in any case, will be considered as investment activity because there is no delivery of the shares by and large. Now coming to the one more issue is the year-end position. You will find that at the every year end, 3-month series are live. March, then April, May, and June. Now, it is not every time, it doesn't happen that the last Thursday falls on the last day of the month. So say for example, in this March 2022, the last Thursday, maybe on 24th or 25th or 26th. So it happens that the clients are entering into transactions for April series or May series or June series. So as we have to find out what is the open position of the client. And now it is very clear that it may be a profit or it may be a loss. So far as open position is concerned, it has to be taken to the balance sheet and not part of the profit and loss account. So every time you close the client's accounts about the F&O transactions, then you have to make sure that open position is taken care of and the profit and loss element in the open position is taken to the balance sheet itself. And in the next year, on the 1st of April, it will be reversed. And then again, when the transaction is squared off, the respective amount of profit and loss will be taken to the F&O trading account of the next year. So for example, I'm just trying to explain to you again. In the month of March, I purchased one lot of Reliance for April series at the rate of 2,400. The price at the last Thursday of the March 22 is say 2,500. So hypothetically, I have earned the profit of 100 rupees. But so far as my account and income tax return is concerned, this is not my profit for the year concerned, because this is the profit which is related to the April month series. April falls in 22-23. So I have to taken this profit to the balance sheet, and then in the next year, it will go to P&L account. Similarly, if there is a loss, it has to be taken to the balance sheet. Respectively, current liability, if it's a profit, if it's a loss, it is current assets. And then in the next year, when the transaction is squared up, it will be taken to the trading and profit and loss account. One more query, M2 margin paid or received cannot be part of turnover. Difference between selling but the future contract would be considered. Is this correct? Yes, it is very correct. M2M is never part of turnover, but as I told you, this is a simple formula which the accountants are adopting. They are taking your account from the broker's books. They are absolutely reverse mirroring. Whatever broker has debited, you are crediting to the broker account. Whatever he has credited, you are debiting broker's account. So at the end of the day, your balance and broker's balance will be matching. So whatever amount is there in your account is tallied. So artificially turnover will be increased, but M2M margin is never part of turnover. Now coming to what is turnover. If you are correctly done the accounting part, then you will have one F&O trading account at the year end. Open positions would be taken to the next year. Then the conservative view is you have to make the summation of the credit as well as debit. Make a total of whatever debit entries are there in the F&O trading account and credit entries, and then put a total of debit plus credit. That will be considered as a turnover so far as F&O transactions are concerned. So it's a conservative. The reason being, turnover is something which is turning over. There are many judgments which says that gross value of the transaction is not turnover. I have come across many cases before 5, 10, 15 years that the officers were saying that your turnover is in millions and trillions, because they don't, the officers do not understand what the share market is, and they are just borrowing the data from the exchanges. And if you look at the STT certificate, there is a security transaction certificate wherein the gross value is shown. So in many of the clients, it runs into millions and trillions. But that is not a turnover, because if I'm buying one lot of Reliance today, the volume is 6 lakhs. If I'm selling in the same day, again, it is 6 lakhs. So in STT certificate, the volume will be shown as 12 lakhs of rupees. But actually my profit is, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. So it's a wrong turnover. It is never part of the turnover. So the simple formula is you have to make the total of debit plus credit in the F&O trading account, and that will be part of your turnover. So if a particular client is dealing in intraday transactions in the delivery segment, delivery-based transactions, and also in F&O transactions, then you have to make sure that you plus take F&O account, make total of debit and credit, then the sales account in your trading account on delivery-based transactions, and plus debit and credit of intraday transactions, which you are otherwise showing as a speculative transactions. So F&O debit credit total, intraday debit credit total, plus the sale account, which is there in your trading account, all put together will be a total turnover of this particular client. I am also of the opinion that the day-to-day contracts should not form part of turnover. Only opening contract and squaring up contract will be part of it. No, opening contract and squaring up contract will not be part of turnover. This is nothing like opening contract or closing contract. Opening contract is generated or emanated when you put the order of buy or sell with your broker on F&O segment. Then till you square it off, every day they will prepare the contract. Every day they will take the closing M2M as opening in the next year, then again closing, again opening. The day on which you square it off, then only that amount of profit will be taken to the trading account, F&O trading account. Now, one issue is that nowadays there is buyback of shares by the companies. So section 1034 capital A says that when the company is buying back the shares, these are listed securities are bought back. Many times we have seen, Wipro, TCS, and a number of cases we have seen in the last year that the companies have bought back their shares. That is exempt in the hands of the investor. The reason being, under section 115Q capital A, the company is paying tax on your behalf at the rate of 20%. But the practical advice to the clients we give is that this buyback of shares procedure is completed through broker. We are not directly giving the shares to the company. This transaction has to be completed through the broker. So we have to get a confirmation letter from the broker that this particular transaction about the giving of my shares in buyback formula is not a sell transaction, but it is routed through you, and hence a confirmation letter is required to be taken from the broker, so that when the assessment is going on and you are claiming this income as an exempt income, then it comes as a handy supporting evidence. One second. Some problem in my system. Just a second. Okay. One more issue is, somebody asks about the dividend income and, section 14A. Now, after the dividend is taxable, I think there is no relevance of that, because 14A is applicable when there is exempt income and you are claiming any expenditure about the exempt income or in relation to the exempt income. But now the dividend is taxable, so no relevance of that. It is not applicable. So 14A, doesn't come into the picture now. Two more things I would like to touch upon is that there are some clients who are expert in planning, so they will convert their stock into investment during the year and vice versa. Why they are doing so? Because if, somebody has a good amount of the carry forward business loss, so what they will do, they will convert their investment into stock. And when the stock is sold after some time, one is the taxability of that conversion as an investment, as a long-term or short-term capital gain will be deferred, and he can take the benefit of the profit from the converted shares, which is now stock, that is business activity. And if there is a profit, he will take benefit of the carry forward loss. This they are doing during the year when the price of a particular share has increased from 1st of April till the date he is taking a call or decision. Say, for example, today is September 18th. If I have some shares, I will see that what is the price of this particular shares as on 1st of April and as on today. If there is a substantial increase in the price of that particular share, I will convert my investment on 1st of April because my books are open with me. And now I will sell the shares so that I will earn the profit from 1st of April to date as a business income. And I have some carry forward business loss. So I'll be in a position to set up my carry forward loss against this current year's business income. Vice versa also possible. Somebody is, converting the stock into investment. They will sell the shares depending upon the price at which it is converted and the actual final price of the completion of the transaction, that is sell. So I think broadly I covered this issue. Now we can open the chat box and queries of the members can be replied to the extent possible and to the extent my capacity permits me. Just a second. In case of options, we are taking total of sale value and absolute value or profit and loss. In that case, also what we should record at debit side to claim the loss from the transaction. I'm not getting what is, when we are going to audit books of account, what we should deduct from the absolute value turnover. Okay. In case of options, we are taking total of sale value. In options, there is no sale value as such. In option, there is the holder of the call or put is paying the premium. So for him, that is straight an expense. So far as the writer of the option is concerned, it is his income. In the initial stage, it is his income. But when that option is settled, it is possible that he ends up incurring loss. So ultimately, in option, there is no gross value system. There is only premium which is paid or received. So I think that is there is no absolute value. Okay. In case of options, we are just a second. Some queries are there. Okay. If we add the negative difference in turnover and profit and loss account, at what place we will deduct the sale figure? Just a second. I will. The very interesting and practical query. I will take help of my strong right hand person, Mr. Manthan, because they are showing this. Manthan, also requesting me to suggest ICA study material and any other reference books that covers the salmon. There is one old book issued by Bombay Chartered Accountant. Manthan, there is one old book issued by Bombay Chartered Accountant Society, which is very exhaustive book I have come across. Of course, it is very old book, so many parts of that book may not be relevant, but still it is like a Gita for us. And in absence of any other book, that is to be seen. Second is, I have written many articles on this, so I can share with Harit or the organizers. So at appropriate time, if they want to circulate through mail or through newsletter, I am ready to contribute. I have many articles with me, which I have contributed to the various journals. So that is there. In case of futures, turnover is calculated by aggregating of the absolute sum of settlement, profit and loss, and for FIR, but where there is a loss from the transactions and SSC wants to carry forward the loss to the extent negative, we need to audit books of account. We are going to audit books of account, what we should deduct from the one query is that if there is a negative figure in the return of income, where we are showing other expense. Just a second. I just want to make this big one. Instead of this. So the query is. So if there's a negative value, it will go to other expense because there is no place to show in the ITR that minus side is not, minus sign is not accepted in the return. So we are showing it in other expense. Then the next query is, just a second. To the best of my knowledge, in case of option trading, the turnover will not be only profit loss in case of option. Even the amount at which the same has been squared off is to be taken as per the ICA guidance in tax audit. No. I think what the query is saying is, in option, the gross value of the If I am writer of a call of any company or any script, I don't have to take the gross value of that particular script or particular lot. No, it is only, but turnover will not be only profit loss in case of option. Even the amount at which the same has been squared off is to be taken. Obviously, I think some understanding is there. There is a difference between the the rate at which the premium was paid or the option was entered into. So it is settled, and whatever difference is there, it is taken to the option trading account. So that will be part of the turnover. If a total of debit and credit both, I think that is there. To the best of my knowledge, option and turnover, okay. In case of options, we are taking total of sale value and absolute value. Still, I am not getting the query, because in option, there is nothing like absolute value or sale value. There is nothing like sale value. In option trading, there is a premium. It is like an, as I told you, it is a premium. So it all depends upon. In nutshell, question is what is turnover in option? Turnover option, again, I am repeating. In options, if you are a holder, you are paying premium, it is nothing turnover, it is straightway going to your expense. So far as you are writer, you are selling the option, then you are earning it, it will go to credit of option trading. If it is a profit, if in the end of the settlement, if you are to incur, because it's possible, even if you are selling the option on the day one, you are a gainer. But it is possible that when the month is expired, the rate of that particular option may be negative for you. So that will be a debit in your option trading account. So again, I am saying total of debit and credit will be part of the turnover. So 44AB, number one, intraday delivery segment, total of debit and credit. 2, sales value on delivery-based transactions in your trading account. 3, in F&O segment, total of debit and credit of F&O trading account. And number 4, total of debit and credit of your option trading account. So all put together, A, B, C, D will be the turnover so far as 44AB section is concerned.
total of debit credit of
ICAI guidance note is mentioning that along with profit loss, you have to add the amount at which the option is squared off. Yes, I agree. Manish Agrawal, yes, you are right. Institute guidance note says that you have to add both profit and loss. Yes, not only credit side, because some one saying that only sale is credit. So in F&O trading, only you have to take the credit side. No, you have to make the total of debit and credit, meaning that in the turnover will be only when you write partnership from carrying short-term transaction, F&O transaction, also capital invested in own unsecured loan and loan taken by NBFC. Client wants to categorize the short-term transaction in capital gain head. What should be the approach of chartered accountant? It all depends upon the number of transactions. If the number of transactions are not many, and then if they have own capital and the amount invested is matching with the own capital, then you can say that whatever unsecured loan and NBFC loan are there are used for other purpose. But if you are paying interest to the unsecured loans and also to NBFC, and then you are entering into F&O transaction also, then it is very appropriate for a chartered accountant to consider all the transactions as a business transactions. Because as I told you, in Fidelity case, the advance ruling was there are 7-8 parameters, and in your case, the parameters are very clear that borrowed account, F&O transaction, borrowed amount, F&O transactions, and the transaction is for the short-term period, meaning thereby the average holding period is not much. So all put together, it seems that it will be approach of chartered accountant while doing tax audit. Here it's a business transaction, and you have to consider it as a business activity, because you will be able to claim interest also, meaning that if all turnover will be only when you are writers of options. Yes, it options premium plus profit and loss. No. Again. Yeah, everyone is saying the same thing. Again, I'm repeating. Even if you are buyer or seller, you have like F&O trading account, you have option trading account. Problem is, normally what happens, option writer is considered to be a trader in option. Now, I'm trying to go into the detail. Option writer, the person who is seller of the option is considered as a trader in the option segment. The person who is buyer of, or the holder of the option is by and large doing not on naked. Yes, they can go on the naked strategy, but by and large he is doing something to safeguard his own position. So at the end of the day, whatever he is paying, it can be claimed either as an expense, or it can be a separate account as an option trading account. But and then you put a total of, but that's a very limited part of it. Writer of option, yes, it will be profit plus loss, that will be part of turnover. So far as holder or buyer of option is concerned, to me, he is doing that not to trade in the options. By and large, he is doing to safeguard his position. So that will be an expense to the profit and loss account. Turnover in case of options premium received is also to be added with a yes. Yes. So if I have sold Reliance put and earned premium of 100 and on expiry it is 0, so I have earned profit. Yes. Turnover will be profit plus loss plus premium. Your premium is your profit. You have earned premium 100 rupees, expiry is 0, it means your profit is 100. Your profit is not 200 rupees. Whenever you are selling the option, your amount of profit is fixed. Your right is limited to the premium. Your obligation is unlimited, depending upon how the holder will take the position.
Sir, in turnover option, premium received is also included.
Yes, that is going to be on the credit side of your option trading account.
No, actually, ICAI guidance note says that in turnover in case of option will be profit plus loss and premium received.
No, they are saying on the assumption that you are taking position also. As I told you in the very initial stage, that I am holding Reliance to safeguard. I am selling my option of a long distance strike price. In that case, you are right. What ICAI said, you are saying, and I am saying is the same in a particular given situation. That I am holding some position against which I am taking a position. I am selling the option, so I am earning some premium. So that will be a part, part A of the turnover. Then I have a standing position on which I may have profit or loss. If I have profit, so that profit plus premium, both put together will be the part of turnover.
So,
but if there is a naked position, there is nothing against that, then there will be only one thing. The premium which I earn will be my profit, and which will be in the end will be part of my turnover. At the time of accounting, what we should debit from absolute value of carry forward loss? I think I am not clear. What should we debit from absolute value to carry forward loss? I'm sorry, I'm not able to get the correct intention of the querist. In F&O, we can use 4480 by, yes, in F&O, in my office, we have taken a call that we are doing that, and the clients are not happy. They are saying that it is not practically possible to earn 6%. It is not certain that we will earn or lose, but 6% across the board is there, and we are taking in my office, we are using 4480 for F&O transactions. Does section 45 applicable to speculative transaction and F&O? Here is a same principle. Somebody asked, even for speculative transactions, we are adding debit plus credit and find out the turnover, and then putting 6% or 8% as a case may be. Here 8% is not possible because there is no cash transactions, but yes, we are doing that. In case of future, turnover is calculated by aggregating the absolute sum of settlement profit and loss for FO. But when there is loss from the transactions and SSC wants to carry forward the loss to the next year, we need to audit books of accounts. So when we are going to audit books of accounts, what we should deduct from the absolute value? If there is a loss in F&O transaction, we audit the book. Okay, you carry forward the loss as a business loss, normal business loss. What is to be deducted? I still not, let me take help of my are you getting? I'm still not. The first part I understand, Mr. Jubair, that there is a loss. You are, auditing books of accounts, fair enough. And then you are carrying forward the loss. Yes, you can carry forward for the next year to, we need to audit books of accounts. And so when we are going to audit books of accounts, what we should deduct? There is nothing to be deducted. Having loss in F&O and can declare 6% profit to avoid. Yes, in F&O, you can declare 6% and avoid the audit. How to show F&O transaction, ITR, intraday transaction also. In F&O, as I told you, it is a separate account, F&O trading account. And if there's a loss, we are showing in other expenses. If it's a profit, again, other operating revenue. Just a percent difference in profit on the other expense. As derivative business income and intraday, it is speculative how to show two business in ITR 4486%. Yeah, there is a separate speculative head in your return of income. Profit and gains of business, you have one normal business, other is the speculative business. So you can just definitely show two different things in the two different columns. In case of future, now that Jubair is coming out with some clarification, in case of future, turnover is calculated by aggregate the absolute relevant profit loss. But when there is a loss from that transaction, SSE wants to carry forward the loss to the next year, we need to, simply because you want to carry forward the loss, you are not required to audit the books. You have to audit the books only when it is required to be audited anyway. So when we are going to audit books of account, what we should deduct from the absolute value? Positive amount 150, negative amount 180, turnover 330. What to deduct from turnover to carry forward loss of 30?
बुक्स में तो नेट -30 जो है ना,
हाँ,
बुक्स में तो प्रॉफिट माइनस लॉस एक अकाउंट में डेबिट फिगर चलती है, ऑटोमेटिकली 30 जाते बुक्स में.
in your books of accounts, it will be 30 only, and you have to show this 30 other expense. Not necessary that you show 150 as sales and 180 as purchase. So automatically it will be, 30 rupees. You are saying that the 330 is a turnover, but so far as your books of account is concerned, it is showing a loss of 30 rupees, and you have to show this loss as other expense. Can we set off loss from F&O from profit from intraday profit? Intraday profit, yes.
नेट फिगर ना होता है.
Can we show net figure? No, because speculation loss can be set off only against speculative profit, but it is not other way. So speculative profit can be utilized to get set off from the normal loss, but you cannot net it off because both are the different set of transactions. Is it necessary to audit books? So even if your turnover is less than 10 crores and all transactions are carried out digitally, I think this.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Just a sec. Yeah. Next query or question. Is there anything left out? If you are purchased from relative without broker, so STT is not paid. So what it will make a difference in taxation? It's an off-market transaction, so you'll not be able to get the benefit of the concession rate in short term. I'm not able to scroll this. Then, but I'm not able to, I have some problem with my system. So we are taking a phone. Suppose a company is holding mutual funds since last many years and the same has been sold in current year, then whether the same will be considered as speculation? No, mutual fund is never by speculation. You are having a delivery in your Demat account or physical. Now everything is in Demat. Yes. If you purchase shares from relative, I answered that. Are presumptive provisions applicable? I only answer as per section 73. As per section 73. Explanation 73, I try to explain to you. I'm not clear, but again, I'm repeating. that there is an exception to exception, that, you know, normally when there is a delivery of transaction, it's a normal business. Exceptions are 43.5, B, C, D, and E. D, E for F&O transaction, B and C for the delivery segment. But there is other way around. When there is a delivery, even though there is a delivery, it will be considered as a speculation. So far, expansion 73 is concerned. So this section 73 query is related to mutual fund. Okay, suppose a company is holding mutual funds in the, no, that expansion is applicable to shares only. I can read out for your benefit. Where any part of the business of a company other than a company whose gross total income consists mainly of income in which the charges under the head income from house property and security, capital gain showing for a company, consider purchase and sale of shares of the other companies. So it is not talking about mutual fund, it is only of the shares of the other company. Then only expansion to 73 comes into the picture, otherwise not. If we add negative, oh no, any other issue? Company holding mutual funds in large many and the same has been sold in current year, then the same will be considered. No speculation, it will be a normal, depends. If you have sold for years as investment, then it will be a long-term capital gain or loss, as the case may be. If you have, I mean, sown in your accounts as a stock, you know, one may deal in mutual fund also. You can do trading of mutual fund. If you have sown as stock, then it will be a normal business loss. So no speculation. I could not hear you. Your reply and audit requirement in case of turnover less than 10 crores and losses will need to carry forward. Could you please reply again? So if the turnover is between 2 crores and 10 crores, then the audit is not required to be done. Obviously, that condition of 5%, you know, cash transactions is not for more than 5%. Then only. Otherwise, I mean, you are not required because the government has taken out the tax audit almost practically from all of us. Any more?
If it is between 1 and 2,
yes, 1 and 2, then you have to go to check whether, you know, 6% criteria is match or not. Interesting amendment, you know, in the last year. The person who is having more turnover is exempted. The person having less turnover is required to get his accounts audited. I think I'm not getting that's.
How to conduct audit of F&O.
How, the next question is how to conduct audit F&O transactions.
Just how to conduct audit in F&O transactions. Very difficult. The most difficult question somebody put before me. In F&O transactions, the best part is, as I told you, the brokers are now giving some extra reports to you. One is investor summary report, F&O special transactions. You have to find out the open positions. You have to make sure that the position which is open at the year end is taken to the balance sheet, and you have the accountant role to play here because there is F&O transactions, and you can go on sampling basis because everything is on screen now. So nobody is giving any hard copies. So far as audit is concerned, you will not be able to get the contracts because otherwise, you know, every client who is dealing more in this segment will have files and files of the contract because every day one contract is generated, even if there is only one transaction. So say for example, I am entering into one transaction on the first day of the expiry, I mean of the series, and I'm not doing anything, you know, during whole month. Then even for one transaction, the broker will issue to me the 30 contract notes. So I mean physical contract notes now nobody is verifying. You can ask for the soft copies and go on sampling basis. Next is. Now delivery is allowed even in future. Yes, in exceptional case in futures contracts of stock delivery is allowed. If I have sold call options, okay, and I have to deliver shares, whether it will be considered as investment profit or speculative. It will never be speculative because against your future position or options, option position, you are supposed to match with. See, delivery is possible to the extent your readiness. In commodity, it was there. Intention has to be given, but it will be considered as investment or speculative or business. I think it will be speculative part is out of it. It all depends upon if you are showing otherwise the investment, it will be long-term or short-term capital gain or else a business profit loss. If investment profit, can it be segregated LTC? Yes. If investment is there, you can very well segregate between LTCG and STCG depending upon the holding of the investment. So,
Okay.
any more issue or query about it? I tried my level best to satisfy you.
Any participant is having any query?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, Zubair.
Sir, Jubair here.
Yeah, Jubair.
સર હવે આમાં ફ્યુચર્સમાં પ્રોફિટ અને લોસ જે પણ થાય એનું આપણે ટોટલ કરીને એક ટર્નઓવર આપણે મેળવીએ
Right.
બરાબર હવે એ ટર્નઓવર માંથી આપણે ડિડક્ટ શું કરવાનું તો આપણે લોસ કેરી ફોરવર્ડ થાય
તમે આ ક્વેશ્ચન કેમ તમે હું તમને ફરીથી સમજાવું અમે ડિડક્ટ કરવાનું કશું હોતું જ નથી. there are two positions. તમારા P&L એકાઉન્ટમાં તમારે 30 રૂપિયાનો લોસ આવ્યો છે. તમારું one side it is 180 rupees, other side 150 rupees, right? And the net balance of that account is 30 rupees, which is taken to your P&L account, and then you will file the return and carry it forward. That as simple as that.
પણ સર એમાં ફ્યુચર્સમાં તો કેવું 150 180 ટોટલ ટર્નઓવર 330 લેવું પડે ને
Turnover is computed for the purpose of tax audit purpose. There is two situations possible. One is you can show 30 rupees as the other expense and carry forward the loss. Second option is some of the chartered accountants are doing that they are showing 180 as the purchase and 150 as sales in the return of income. So automatically your 30 rupees will be taken care of. Nothing is to be separately deducted. You cannot show turnover 30. I now got your query that you want to say that if my turnover is 330 and my loss is 30 rupees, how to reconcile that 300 difference? But it is not required to be done. That is for the limited purpose. I now get your query that if I am showing the turnover in the return of income as 330 and my loss is 30, how can I show 300 rupees, that difference anywhere in the return of income, and what to deduct? I agree now, or I understand now, but it is not required to. It is, I mean, you are this turnover of 330 is only for the limited purpose of the issue whether to go for the audit or not. So far as your ITR is concerned, there are two situations possible. One is you straightway show 30 rupees as the other expense. Other is you show purchase as 180 and sell as 150. So it will take care of.
તો સર આમાં બેટર ઓપ્શન તો એ જ રહેશે ને કે જે આ લોકો સ્ટેટમેન્ટ આપે છે શેર બ્રોકર્સ બધા કે ડેબિટ સાઈડ પરચેઝ સાઈડ ને ક્રેડિટ સાઈડ અને ફાઇનલી આપણે છેલ્લે લોસ
તો તમારે છે ને ઘણા બધા ક્લાયન્ટ ઓડિટમાં નહીં આવતો છતાં ઓડિટમાં આવી જશે કારણ કે it will also consist of the margin amount.
પણ સર હવે આમાં એક એક ફિગર શોધવા જઈએ તો આપણે તો બધું લાભ
Very true. I am getting one. મેં આના જે એકાઉન્ટિંગ સોફ્ટવેર આવે છે અને પણ એમાં પ્રોબ્લેમ એ આવે છે many of my clients have acquired the accounting software but એ બહુ લિમિટેડ યુઝ માટે છે એટલે એના અપડેટ્સ નથી આવતા. So there are some problems. There are certain questions which for which there are no clear cut answers. As I told you in the initial stage કે આમાં ત્રણ એકાઉન્ટિંગ છે, એક તમે કહો છો, એક હું કહું છું, ત્રીજું સાચું છે.
બરાબર છે.
If turnover is F&O is 1 crore and actual profit is 95 lakhs, so should we file return and show profit of 6%? No, 6% is the minimum amount. It is not an umbrella given to you that you can take benefit and forget. How will you capitalize in your books of accounts? 6% નો એક common chartered accountants માં પણ આ issue છે. Forget about shares and security. કોઈ કાપડનો ધંધો કરતો હોય તો કે આપણે 6% બતાવી દઈએ, વાત પૂરી કરી, ચોપડા નથી રાખવા. પછી કમાઈ ગયો હોય 18%, તો પછી બાકીના 12%નું કેપિટલાઇઝેશનનું બેનિફિટ ક્યાંથી લેશો? So 6% is minimum. If it is not 6%, then minimum 6%.
બટ સર એમ કાપડવાળા બિઝનેસમાં તો આપણે એવું બતાવી શકીએ ને કે આ 6% બતાવ્યું જેમાં બુક્સ બનાયા જ નથી. એકચ્યુઅલ વધારે છે તો આપણને ખબર છે, આપણે એવું કહીએ કે 6%માં બતાવ્યું છે.
No. They have their bank statements અને આપણે 18% કમાયા છે ને 6% બતાવો તો પછી બાકીના 12% તમે કેપિટલાઇઝ ક્યાં કરશો બુક્સમાં? એનો બેનિફિટ કેવી રીતે લેશો?
Books
you read the section again.
That I understood.
It is minimum 6% if it is below 6%. If it is more than 6%, then actual.
Yeah, sir.
Mukesh Doshi, you have raised the hand. You can ask your query. Mr. Mukesh Doshi. Mukesh Doshi, are you there? Any other query to any participant? So I think all the queries are covered. So it's time to conclude. So I would like, first of all, it's my pleasure and privilege to give vote of thanks to Mr. Rajni Shah. Sir, it was wonderful experience at the time of working with you before 5 to 6 years, and still with the same energy.
Yes, I remember. Yes, I remember you. When I see you on screen, I just recollect our old days. Yes.
Yes. And the same energy and with in-depth knowledge. And really, we have cleared all the practical issues which everybody is facing, and in all the time in current time, each and every kind, most of the 90% client are doing the share market transactions. So at that time, it's really necessary to have this insight knowledge. And thank you very much. Thank you. What is not enough to
No.
say. Really, you have explored each and everything and covered each and everything. So thank you very much, sir, on behalf of the Ahmedabad branch of WRC and on behalf of all the participants over here. And I also thank to all the participants for patience listening and here joining this today's session. So thank you all of you, and thank you. Special thanks to Mr. Rajni Shah and team.
Thank you. Thanks to all.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you all.